As I sit here at 2 a.m., currently working through my own case of writer's block, it dawned on me that I have learned a great deal of tips and tricks along the way to help move myself along, because normally, before I got to this point, a case of writer's block could last me several months. And in all that time, I'd get nothing done. And now a case of writer's block lasts me a few hours, maybe, at most a day, at most. Here are 9 tips and tricks that I have learned along the way to absolve my case of writer's block that I hope you guys can find helpful. Numero uno, you must identify the cause of your writer's block. No 2 cases of writer's block are built the same, 9 times out of 10. So you could be sitting there and maybe you've just uncovered a plot hole. Maybe you're encountering what many writers, new and experienced, have gone through, where you don't think your writing is worth anything. Maybe you've been working yourself too hard and you are just approaching burnout. Whatever the case may be, identifying what is the cause of your writer's block can then help you determine what you need to do to absolve your case of writer's block. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation here, and that was one of the issues that I had initially with fixing my own cases of writer's block. I would just walk away from it because I would think, oh, I just need some time to rest. I need time away from the project, as if that was the case every single time. And that's how I would go months on end without making any progress whatsoever. Don't do what I did. Tip number 2, set small but achievable goals. Hopping on a blanket goal of 1,000 words a day, for example, can be a lot. And especially if you're not at a particularly exciting point of your book, you are not motivating yourself to push through those 1,000 words a day. And for me, one of my biggest pitfalls as a new writer has been setting goals that I could not achieve. And when I fall short, it just pushes me further down the hole of not feeling like I'm hitting my goals, I'm not accomplishing anything, I'm not actively working towards my dream, and it kind of all just spirals into a bigger issue. So to prevent such a snowball effect, try breaking your goals down into smaller goals. Try 100 words a day or 200 words a day instead of 1,000. Any progress forward is progress. Tip number 3, try sprint writing. Now, as a chronic overthinker, I am constantly getting stuck in details that do not matter right now, as I am in my first draft stage. And as we all know, this is the stage where things are going to change on a day-to-day basis, sometimes an by-hour basis. And yet I will be over here worried about the name of the street that they're on, when that has nothing to do with nothing, and it won't ever have nothing to do with nothing, even in the editing phase, and I'm spiraling worrying about the details. So one of the tricks that I like to use to pull me out of that cycle of overthinking is sprint writing. So what you want to do is set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and give yourself that amount of time to just write whatever comes to mind. It could be something as simple as Bob is going to the grocery store and Bob is picking up some meat and he passed by the dairy aisle and made a face. And then to you, you're like, is Bob lactose intolerant? Does Bob have some sort of bad memory with milk? We don't know, but you just uncovered some random detail that could be important to your story later. Or it could be as big as these planets are about to collide with one another, and only this man that has the power of the moon can stop the 2 planets from colliding. Who is this man? What is his power? Where does it come from? It could be anything, but use those 10 to 15 minutes to do nothing but writing. Put your phone on do not disturb, give yourself a distraction-free environment, and go to town and see what you uncover. I feel like that didn't come out as graceful as I intended it to be, but again, it is 2 a.m. and I decided to be raw and transparent in this moment as I was dealing with my own case of writer's block. So here we are. Tip number 4, change your environment. One of my biggest obstacles with writer's block as a new writer has been getting too comfortable when I am writing. And I know what I'm dressed in right now. I'm not talking about my clothes. I just mean I would get propped up on the couch and have a cozy blanket on, have some music playing that has a lot of lyrics and distracting music, and creating a vibe that was just not helping me be productive. So when I decided to start taking this journey seriously, I said, what are the things that are holding me back from accomplishing my daily goals? I need to not be writing on the couch anymore or getting super comfortable like that, because sometimes I would just pass out and take a nap as well. So the writer's block would also just lead me staring at my computer, which would lead to me passing out and taking a nap. So what did I do? I bought a standing desk with a walking pad. I learned that I was my most productive when I was in motion. At least for me, I feel like the physical flowing of energy helped with the mental flowing of energy, and it just all coincides. So for me personally, my change of environment was adapting with a standing desk and walking pad. But I have also tried things like going to a cafe. I've tried libraries. I've tried parks. Any type of environment change like that has been super helpful to me, especially for those location types that I listed. They generally have a good chill vibe to them that are very helpful with helping you to get in a productive mindset. Tip number 5, take breaks and practice self-care. Now, not all walls are meant to be climbed over the second that you encounter them. Sometimes you gotta take your hands off that rope, take a few steps on back, and just walk in the opposite direction. That don't mean you're never gonna climb over that wall. That just means you've been running through that obstacle course all day and you don't even have the energy left to get past that wall. So what do you need to do? You need to go recuperate that energy. You need to go find something to do that pours some energy, pour something back into your cup so that you can then pour into your project. Outside of writing, what brings you peace of mind? What brings you joy? What helps you to relax? Whatever your answer is, you need to do that. Take a step back and just do those things. Prioritize yourself in that moment and not your project. One of the things that I personally love to do is meditate. So when I say I meditate, I will pick a spot outside. There is a little tiny lake outside of where I live. So I'll sit by the lake and I will concentrate on one specific sound on that lake, which is usually like a goose or duck or something like that. It could be out there making a ruckus, and I'll focus on that particular sound. And for me as an overthinker, this is a very strong tool to get my mind to shut out unnecessary thoughts. So if I have a train of thought that starts to move away from that goose or that duck or whatever the sound is that I chose, most of the time I can realize that I'm doing it and stop it right then and there, and then bring my attention back to whatever the sound is that I picked. And I stick with that sound until the end of my meditation. And I found that after doing this, I come back with a much clearer headspace. I feel creative. I feel like that inspirational juice flowing. Also, I feel like this is a given, but please get some rest. I know I'm saying this at 2 a.m., so maybe I should take my own advice. But the inspiration fairies cannot visit your dreams if you are hopped up on 500 milligrams of caffeine and staring at a blank page, waiting for something to strike. Get some rest and let it come to you later. Tip number 6, use writing prompts or exercises. So this is something that I actually picked up relatively recently when I joined my local writing club. I noticed that when we would come in for the initial meet and greet, they would give everybody a writing prompt, and they would allow us to work on this until we would start the itinerary for the day. The subject would change every single time, and it was a limit of 50 words every single time. So it was not meant to be something that you could give too much thought to, which is quite the challenge for, again, an overthinker. But to me, I realized that this was the equivalent of stretching before a workout. So it would loosen me up and put me in a much better headspace so that way I could receive whatever lesson I needed to receive, or receive inspiration, and just be open to the process in a way that I would have been a little bit more tightened up before. Tip number 7, revisit your goals or outline. Now, sometimes we end up staring at a fraction of a puzzle piece so intently and for so long that we end up tricking ourselves into thinking that that is the full picture. And then we get upset when it doesn't make any sense to us. You start freaking out because ain't nothing going on with that pebble, but honey, you're missing out on the waterfall that's 10 feet away. That pebble's right in front of you. That's all you can look at. That's all you can focus on. But that waterfall is so beautiful. It's right there, but it's 10 feet away. You can't even bother to look up and see it. And yes, I'm also talking to myself when I say these things. But when this happens, the quick and easy solution is to simply go back to the heart of your story. Go back to the why of your story. What is the point of the story that you are telling? And oftentimes that helps you to figure out what needs to happen to get past your writer's block. For me, a lot of the time that actually puts my characters in a space for them to figure out the problem. Once I go back to my why and I'm like, what's even the point of this story? Then my characters kind of take over in that moment, and they're the ones who pull the wagon along. Tip number 8, read or watch something inspiring. Now this one sounds relatively obvious, but it's crazy because based off of my months upon months of research, this is also something that a lot of writers, especially new writers, struggle with. And for me in particular, it's a matter of time. I end up telling myself, if you have time to watch this show, you have time to write. Why aren't you writing? Or if you have time to sit here and read this book, you have time to write. Why aren't you writing? And when I think of things that way, it kind of puts me in the space of pushing myself to write even when I hit this block. So I just end up staring at a screen for hours on end and I get nowhere. But when you rephrase the purpose of your watching Netflix or you're reading a book or anything like that, when you rephrase it as this is helping me as a writer, this is helping my career, this is giving me something so that way I can give something. When you think of it that way, it becomes a lot easier to just chill. Consuming inspiring content helps you produce inspiring content. If you take nothing else from this video, please take that. Actually take that and this. It keeps you in a constant state of storytelling. Even if you are not the one that's telling the story, consuming something where a good story is being told helps to keep you in that mindset of storytelling. And to also throw in there music. Listening to music can be massively beneficial. For me in particular, I can't really listen to anything that has a lot of lyrics in it or anything like that, but I do listen to atmospheric and cinematic fantasy music. So it's wildly dramatic instrumentals, but it keeps me in that mindset of telling a story because I can see almost like a movie scene happening in my head when I hear this action type music. And last but not least, tip number 9, celebrate small wins. I think that this one is another fairly obvious but constantly overlooked tip. I think that a lot of us can struggle with cutting ourselves some slack and giving ourselves some grace. And especially when you hit the point where I've hit where you're like, I'm going to publish this book no matter what. Sometimes if you don't hit that goal that day because you hit writer's block and you can't get past it, or things aren't flowing out of you the way that you intended, it can feel like I am a failure. What is the point of even me doing this? If I can't even accomplish this today, then why am I even getting fired up to do this career? Even now, so that I've started this YouTube channel, what is the point of having started this YouTube channel because I can't get anything right? But again, that's in a very quick moment of writer's block. And of course, I utilize all 9 of these tips to get myself out of it that much quicker, but it's still something that crosses my mind in the moment. But once I learned to start celebrating my small wins, that was the ultimate game changer for me. And to reinforce tip number 8, consuming someone else's wonderful storytelling can also be a small goal that you achieve that day. Binging Avatar: The Last Airbender, for example, such a wonderful story to tell, that is a huge accomplishment. Or watching One Piece, that is a huge accomplishment to me because that is a wonderful piece of art right there. But you are ingesting someone else's wonderful storytelling and you are fueling your own creativity and your own inspiration. So that in and of itself is a small goal that should be celebrated. And I am going to throw in a bonus tip that has been a huge help to me so far, and we can also just make this an even 10, but redefine what works for you. because maybe the reason that you have writer's block is because you're trying to achieve a goal that is someone else's goal, but it shouldn't be your goal. Now bear with me because it's now 3 a.m. So it could be my 3 a.m. brain setting in. But for example, I am on my first draft right now, and I have never in my life completed a first draft of anything. So this is pretty monumental for me right now that I am moving through it as smoothly as I am. But what helped me to change that and to stop experiencing writer's block as intently as I was redefining what a first draft was to me. And when I say redefining, I got stuck in a constant loop of editing my first draft over and over and over again because I needed it to be perfect and sounds like a professionally published novel in its first go round. And it makes no sense. I know that now. It makes no sense. But even when I was looking at what other people consider to be their first draft, that was still something that wound up not working for me because I would still get stuck in these overthinking spirals. So now to me, my first draft is a rough basic outline of each and every chapter. It is the most basic of sentences. It is a very much so like the example I gave earlier where Bob goes to the grocery store and what happens at the grocery store? This happens, and then Bob goes home and this happens, and that's the chapter. I don't make it fluffy, I don't make it cute, and that has been honestly, it was hard to bypass at first, but it got a lot easier the more that I kept doing it. But for me, it took redefining what a first draft is supposed to look like in order for me to get past the writer's block that was setting in and to get it done. At the end of the day, your goal is simply to get it done. So whatever gets you to getting it done, that is a win. I really hope that you guys found my 9 tips and tricks, or technically 10, but I hope that you found it all quite helpful, and especially coming from somebody who is right in the trenches with you. To my fellow writers out there, let's go ahead and help each other out and comment down below with any helpful tips that I may not have mentioned that you have found to be super useful for overcoming your own case of writer's block. Thanks again for tuning in to yet another episode of Flipping the Page with Antonia Carter. If you found any of this useful, helpful, or somewhat entertaining, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can follow along for more useful or slightly entertaining videos.